place to work. University of Illinois Extension.
The long day's work begins. It's from dawn to dusk and after. That's the way things are on the farm. Summer and winter go by. It may be dark in the barn, but you've got to milk just the same. It may be hot or cold, but the feed has to go to the cattle.
3 years after the stock market crash of 1929, still in the depths of the Great Depression, dairy farmers in America's heartland laid the foundation of a financial success story. The cornerstones of a Fortune 500 company were planted firmly in the hands of producers.
Milk ringing in the pail, white and clean. Fresh milk for the town and the city. Milk that makes bones and muscles for the children of a nation.
It was in 1932 that the Illinois Agricultural Association asked dairymen to band together to market cream, to join forces to sell high-quality products at a premium price through cooperatives. 6 years later, in 1938, Producers' Creamery of Carlinville was organized and the Prairie Farm story officially began. In those early years, dairy prices as well as the economy were depressed, and today's Chief Executive Officer of Prairie Farms, Leonard Southwell, says forming cooperatives offered dairymen an opportunity to increase their profit margins.
Number one, cooperatives were organized because they weren't getting the proper price for their raw material from those that were in business, so they said, well, we should form a cooperative. And if there are earnings at the end of the year, why, those earnings are distributed to the members.
Members who are the producer owners of Prairie Farms, sometimes referred to as patrons. And these patrons have done well by joining the Prairie Farms Cooperative. Prairie Farms' total sales exceed $800 million annually and are expected to reach the billion-dollar mark by the turn of the century. By Fortune 500 standards, Prairie Farms' corporate headquarters are indeed modest, but the surroundings here in Carlinville do little to suggest just how progressive Prairie Farms has been over the years. Since 1954, it has merged or acquired more than 50 other dairies. Most of the acquisitions have concentrated on plants producing fluid milk. Sometimes these products were converted to the Prairie Farms label, but not always. Roger Capps is Prairie Farms Senior Vice President and Chief Operating Officer.
If you go into the St. Louis market, the Peevely brand would be the #1 brand that you would find in the St. Louis market area. But it's actually owned and operated by Prairie Farm Dairies. If you move over into Indiana, one of the strong brands is Best Ever Dairy around the Indianapolis area. And again, it's a subsidiary of Prairie Farms, part of our family, but we retain that Best Ever name.
In fact, the Prairie Farms label is found in just 3 of the 10 states its facilities service: Illinois, Indiana, and Missouri. Prairie Farms has built its Fortune 500 company on a reputation of quality, and Cap says about 20% of the dairy's operating budget is spent ensuring every bottle of milk and carton of ice cream carrying the Prairie Farms label is a quality product.
Prairie Farms has built their reputation on quality, and Prairie Farms today spends large dollars to help improve upon quality, and they will continue to spend capital dollars to improve equipment, personnel, delivery equipment, plants, to stay ahead of the curve.
Quality dairy products, Cap says, start on the farm. If asked, Prairie Farms will run lab tests on every cow on a farm to find out where a problem exists. Quality milk starts with the cow, and Prairie Farms is intent on providing its patrons with the best possible advice on how to improve the quality of their operations. Gary Kuhlman works with the dairymen providing milk to Prairie Farms. He believes advising producers to improve their operations provides Prairie Farms with the highest quality raw milk possible.
Quality in our job is to provide the plants with the best possible milk for processing that we can. And that starts right on the individual farm with the individual cow. We want good, healthy cows on the farm. We want dairymen that are going to properly take care of their cows. They're going to do a good job on the farm milking and cooling that milk so that the lowest bacteria and the lowest cell count milk possible is coming off of those farms.
There are about 850 dairy operations in the Prairie Farms system. 78 of those farms service the Carlinville plant, but provide it with just 40% of the milk it uses. The other 60% originates at other cooperatives, most of which ship milk in from Wisconsin. Kuhlman says, as a cooperative, Prairie Farms can afford to be very selective when it adds dairies to its list of patrons, and not every operation is up to the Prairie Farms standard of quality.
We're selective in the people that we buy milk from these days. We want the good farms. We want farms that when you go on the farm, you're going to be proud to drive into the farm and see the farm as it is. And we also look at his quality record. We want to buy milk from those dairies who have good quality milk coming off that farm. So we are very selective on the farms that we do take into Prairie Farms.
And once a member, Prairie Farms insists producing quality milk remains the #1 goal of the patron. Every 6 weeks, and much more often if a problem exists on a farm, a Prairie Farms fieldman inspects each of the operations assigned to him. During these inspections, Kuhlman says the fieldmen suggest how the producer might go about eliminating problems in their operations, be they with the cow or the facility.
For the most part, we look at the quality on the farm. We make some recommendations as to manure handling on the farm. You get into rainy times of the years when it's difficult to haul manure on a daily basis. Maybe the manure starts piling up. We make recommendations on how we can handle his runoff problem.
A poor facility produces poor milk. The cows at these facilities are more likely to have health problems, and health problems often require medications to be resolved. Not one drop of milk from a medicated cow is allowed inside a Prairie Farms processing plant. The screening process on raw milk delivered to Prairie Farms begins on the farm. The very first tests are made when the hauler picks up the milk. They check to see the milk was stored at the proper temperature, below 45 degrees, smell the milk for any putrid odors, and make a visual estimation of its quality. The haulers can reject the load on the spot if the milk doesn't meet Prairie Farms guidelines. A sample of the milk is taken for further screening at the plant. Trucks usually will stop at more than one farm to complete a load, and the milk from all the farms is mixed in the holding tank. The samples collected are the only record of the milk coming from an individual farm. Each sample is tagged with a barcode identifying its point of origin. Before milk on a truck can be unloaded for processing, the laboratory at the Carlinville plant screens it for drugs. If an antibiotic is present in the milk, the entire load must be dumped.
If any antibiotics are found in a load of milk, the milk on that load cannot be used for any human application or cannot be used to be fed to animals. The total load has to be destroyed. Normally the milk is taken back to a farm, it is incorporated in the soil or it is put into a manure pit, mixed in with manure and eventually spread on the soil. But in no way is it ever used for any human or animal feed.
The producer whose cows contaminated the load is assessed the value of the entire truckload, usually about $3,800. Prairie Farms identifies the producer responsible for the antibiotics by running a drug screen on each of the samples from the load. It also uses the samples to track an individual farm's performance. Twice a week, the lab checks samples from each farm. It runs 7 tests on the milk. The lab supervisor in Carlinville says these tests provide Prairie Farms fieldmen with valuable information about the current condition of a dairy farm and its cows.
But it's a lot of effort on everyone's part to be able to do this. See, we monitor every load coming in here. You know, and so, you know, we're here to help them. So we go back and hopefully, you know, we see a problem, we get to hold the fieldman and he gets out there and it's taken care of right away.
One of the tests run is a somatic cell count. Somatic cells are white blood corpuscles, and a high number of them present in a sample suggest a herd, or a cow in the herd, is fighting an infection. The results from all 7 tests are returned to the farm twice a month. The dairymen and the Prairie Farms fieldmen use the accounting to improve conditions at the facility, but the lab at Prairie Farms goes a step further to provide its patrons with the best possible information on a farm. For instance, McLean says farmers will often have the lab run tests on milk from individual cows to check their health.
We also might do their whole herd for them. If they have a problem, they can't find the particular cows that's causing that problem, we'll do their whole herd for them.
All free of charge and in an effort to provide the processing plant with top quality raw milk. The 7 tests run include the somatic cell count, the Babcock test for fat, an added water test, a measurement of the sediment in the sample, the drug screening, a bacteria count, and a preliminary incubation test called a PI. PI subjects the milk to stress at 55 degrees for 18 hours. If bacteria grow, then the fieldmen are alerted the sanitation procedures on a farm are below par.
If you don't have good quality from the beginning from the farm, you aren't going to be able to process it and make, you know, good milk out of it. So our test in here, we are constantly monitoring our raw milk, and then we're relaying that our analysis back to the farmer or whoever it concerns so that they can do something about that.
Quality milk starts on the farm. The federal government has set up standards milk must meet. Prairie Farms' criteria for the milk passing through its processing plant are roughly twice as stringent as the federal standard. The only test milk received is required to pass before it can be unloaded is the drug screen. The other 6 are completed after the milk has entered the plant, and some are not completed until the milk is on the grocery store shelf. In one sense, Prairie Farms is always chasing quality because of the lag between the time a test is started and its completion. On the other hand, because test results are reported back to the farms, it is ahead of the issue by focusing upon the quality of the raw milk it purchases. Milk coming off the truck can be processed at the Carlinville plant in less than an hour, and it is rarely held more than 24 hours before passing through the plant. It begins its journey here in a 40,000-gallon raw milk storage silo. From the silo, it is pumped to the pasteurizer. Joe Delaney is Prairie Farms Quality Assurance Coordinator.
The pasteurizer is a series of basically stainless steel line with pumps and stainless steel metal plates that we've got a heating medium on one side of the metal plate and milk on the other. So we're rapidly heating the milk up.
Pasteurization kills bacteria by subjecting it to high heat. By law, the milk must be brought to 161 degrees to complete pasteurization. Prairie Farms heats its milk to 175 degrees. From the pasteurizer, the milk passes into a large centrifuge where the cream is separated from the skim milk. The two then can be mixed back together at different proportions to produce whole milk, 2%, 1%, 0.5%, and skim milk. The excess cream is sold to Prairie Farms ice cream plants. The standardized milk products, still in the system, are piped to a very expensive piece of machinery. Prairie Farms uses a deodorizer to remove all flavors from its milk. Milk absorbs all kinds of flavors, and its taste can vary with the season and the cow's diet. The deodorizer injects steam into the milk. The steam removes the off flavors, and a vacuum is pulled to remove the steam from the milk. It is not a necessary process, and it is costly, but the cooperative insists providing customers with a consistent tasting milk justifies the deodorizer's continued use. From the deodorizer, the milk passes through a homogenizer.
A homogenizer is basically a large piston pump where we are forcing the milk through very fine screens that break up the fat globules so the cream doesn't rise to the top of the milk. We would, from that point then, we would cool the milk back down through this plate heat exchanger and through, with a cooling media, which would be a food-grade refrigerant type coolant that we would cool the milk down with to bring it down generally under 38 degrees.
The processed milk is then stored in tanks ranging in size from 4,000 to 20,000 gallons. These tanks feed the packaging lines. The 1-gallon plastic jugs Prairie Farms uses are produced on site. The jugs are coated so that each gallon of milk can be traced back to its plant of origin and production shift. Just as the cooperative takes a hand in the quality of milk produced on the dairy farm, it also dictates guidelines its other suppliers must meet, including the makers of the plastic resin used in the blow mold system and the supplier of the pre-made paper cartons. Prairie Farm ships about half of its product in each type of container. Roger Kapp says Prairie Farms requires its suppliers to meet a quality standard, a service standard, and a price standard.
With that understanding between us and our suppliers, we have developed good, long relationships with our suppliers. We're not out every day looking to take quotations and pricing from other suppliers. Many people come to Prairie Farms wanting to supply us, but as long as our supplier meets the criteria that I've defined, then that supplier knows that he's got Prairie Farms as a customer and a partner.
Prairie Farms depends upon its suppliers to provide it with quality products. It uses those products in combination with a strict sanitation regimen on the floor and off to package fluid milk. At the start of each production day, all of the equipment has hot water of at least 180 degrees pumped through the system. It is followed by a chemical sanitizer in cold water. Throughout the day, the operators of each filling machine sanitize with hoses at least on an hourly basis or any time a machine is down for more than 5 minutes. This plant produces 80,000 gallons of milk every day, and on average, the entire Prairie Farms operation processes 5,000 gallons of milk an hour. These containers will leave the plant in less than 48 hours. A drag chain moves the processed milk through the final stages of packaging on its way to the cooler. This cooler can hold as much as 200,000 gallons of milk. It is kept from 35 to 38 degrees. Nowhere in the distribution system does Prairie Farms want its milk to exceed a storage temperature of 40 degrees, and that includes at the grocery store shelf. The expiration date stamped on each Prairie Farms milk product is coded for 16 days. The cooperative says more than 95% of its milk could be sold up to 21 days after manufacture. When milk loses its fresh flavor, and occasionally it does, the cooperative quietly removes it from the store shelf. About 65% of the milk consumed is 2%. The other 35% is equally split between whole and skim milk. The management at Prairie Farms believes fluid milk can only be a top quality product if it is produced by its 1,800 well-trained employees using well-maintained equipment and provided with the top quality raw milk from the farm.
Well, number one, the quality must start on the farm. We cannot make the milk any better once we get it into the plant than what it is on the farm. We stress and work hard with our producer members for top quality raw milk.
The dairymen today, we have several different types of dairymen. You have the dairyman who does the best job he can do, producers that never have you a problem. They are producing probably the best product that can be produced. Then you have the other producer who doesn't quite meet the top standards, and that's the dairyman we have to focus on. He's the dairyman that takes more of your time, the dairyman you call on more often. He's the one who has to realize that times are changing and he must change a little bit. He must be acceptable to new procedures. He must be willing to change with the times. And there's a few of them out there that have the old notion that it was good enough for my father, it's good enough for me. and that has to be changed.
Prairie Farms rewards its progressive producers through an incentive program. It pays producers based on the quality of milk. There are 4 classifications to this quality pricing system: the quality premium, the quality bonus, the base price, and the discount price. The classifications are based on the milk's test performance. Prairie Farms pays producers according to how the milk performs in the standard plate count test, the preliminary incubation count, the somatic cell count test, the amount of sediment present, the water test, and the drug screen test, referred to as the inhibitor test. Since 1938, Prairie Farms has been moving quality forward. Today, it has more than 850 patrons. In recent years, these patrons have been awarded a year-end dividend for their participation in the cooperative that has increased the producer's gross income from milk sales to Prairie Farms by nearly 20%.